What is going on, GBA fans? My name is Berk, and today we'll be bringing you the week 6 of the Pick'em crew for GBA Season 7. And unlike the past 2 weeks, I am not alone. I have Matty Brolick back with me again. So say hi, Matty.
It's good to be back. Sorry, everyone. I was on a little bit of a vacation. Not from the Pick'em crew, just like a legitimate vacation. I didn't have Wi-Fi or anything like that, but it is very, very good to be back, picking once again, along with all my good GBA friends.
So, last week, week 5, as you can see on the screen, this was a very good week for me. 2 people going 8-0. This hasn't happened since Season 5 that anyone's gone 8-0 in the Pick'em crew, with Kelly or Under the Radar going 8-0 one week, and it never happened again until this week. So, I went 8-0, and very, very surprisingly, Bill also went 8-0, and now he's actually positive. He's not actually in last place, which is surprising, very surprising. But despite going 8-0, Matty, you're still well in first at 32-8, and the rest of us are all trying to play catch up.
Yeah, I really need to try to hold on to that lead because one bad week, and all of a sudden I could be seeing myself in a whole different position. But who knows? Maybe I'll go 0-8 this week, and it'll shake up everything.
Well, if you go 0-8, then I'm also going really poorly because we have a lot of the same picks.
True.
Moving on to week 6, the first battle we have is the Free State Torcats versus the Pittsburgh Piratas. Now, I am going with the Free State Torcats, like most people. Jared actually picking the Pittsburgh Piratas, and the biggest reason that I'm going with Duncan and the Free State Torcats, and pretty much everyone else is, and I'm pretty sure you're going to agree with this, is Tup has not been playing the season that well. And if he continues to play the way he's been playing in the first 5 weeks, then I don't really see him pulling out a win this week. He does have a lot of serious threats for Duncan's team. I mean, Tapu Koko is just actually a really big threat to pretty much all of Duncan's team. Not even things like, Venusaur really deal well with it because, it gets Brave Bird. I get that Duncan has a little Marowak, but this is League format. You can tailor a set to take down a counter. So Tup does have a lot of threats. However, I just haven't seen Tup been playing that well, and Duncan's been holding his own against a lot of different coaches, and I think he's been playing a lot better. So I am going to give it to Duncan and the Free State Torcats.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a similar theory here on that pick, just because looking at the matchup, it is pretty tough because I do like a lot of Tup's offensive and defensive mons against Duncan's, but overall, I do think that Duncan has the tools to be able to break down Tup's team and potentially play around the Tapu Koko, and it is not something that would be new to see Tup kind of play some of his big threats not so well, kind of misplay some of his win cons. That is something that we have seen out of Tup in the past, and especially with this season, he really hasn't given us anything to really show that he's got momentum going and that he's kind of got his plays together and is doing well. So with all of that, even though I would say the matchup looks slightly in his favor, I am just going to have to go with Duncan because it seems like overall he's just playing better at the moment, and that's really important.
Yeah, so up next we have the St. Louis Rampardos versus the Borussia Donphan. So why don't you take this match?
Just looking at the two, it was like this was definitely kind of a not easy one for me to pick, but just one that I look at Lars's team, and then I look at Dan's team, and Dan's fastest Pokemon is Terrakion, and Terrakion gets outsped by Latias, Tornadus Eye, and also revenged by things like Bullet Punch Lucario, Aqua Jet Crawdaunt. There's just a lot of ways for Lars to revenge that thing, and that's his fastest Pokemon. And then Lars just has so many other powerful offensive threats that with that type of power and speed control, it just seems like Dan's team isn't defensive enough to be able to really hold off all that offensive onslaught. And Dan has not, been doing exceptionally well this season. So with that being the case, I do think that Lars has a nice matchup here and that he should be able to pull out the win here. So I'm going to go with Lars.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with Lars. Most of us have Lars picked, and a few people have Lars locked. And Dan is going into this match with a little bit more momentum. I think Dan's won the last 2 weeks, I want to say. Either way, it's 2, 2, and 3 teams. And I just really like the matchup Lars has got. Magirna with the right set. Magirna with the right set any week is going to be able to punch holes in teams. I mean, a shift gear Magirna with, dual stab and maybe like Shadow Ball, just Dan really doesn't have a way to deal with that because it's a Magirna. And Magirna is just it's just always the threat.
Yes.
Or like with, it's a Z move user, so like Z, Psybeam or something could probably take out the Toxapex. So Magirna is just a gigantic threat. And as you said, things outspeed the Terrakion. You got the Latias, which can easily deal with Terrakion. So if Lars can use Magirna well, and I think he's starting to get used to how Magirna works, instead of trying to go with a little bit more creative and going with a little bit more standard, it just happens to work out a little bit better for him.
Yep.
So if he can use Magirna well, I can see Lars winning this match.
Me too.
So up next, we have the Philadelphia Scizors versus the Tampa Bay Luxrays, and I am going with Mono and the Tampa Bay Luxrays. I'm locking for Mono and the Tampa Bay Luxrays, and we actually have a few people picking the Philadelphia Scizors. Actually, the confusion locking for Chimpact and the Philadelphia Scizors. So we got competing locks here, but I'm going with Mono because it's Mono. Mono is 5-0. He's been playing phenomenally this entire season, and he's got a ton of momentum going into week 6. I just don't really see him losing. Yes, if we look at Chimpact's team, he does have a lot of threats that can deal with quite a few things on Mono's team. You look at Doug Trio. Doug Trio traps Jirachi, it traps Roserade, it traps Alolan Golem if he decided to have Alolan Golem trapped, Salazzle, Bisharp. It traps a lot of Mono's offense, but at the same time, Mono is a fantastic League format player, and he will think of something to get out of Doug Trio being such a massive threat to his team. And then you just look at the other threats Mono has. Buzzwole. Buzzwole is just, it's so hard to deal with. And then you add in Zygarde, and Chimpact doesn't really have much that wants to deal with Zygarde because 1,000 Arrows is kind of a dumb move. It hits everything. So I see Mono winning this match. I've like all the confidence in Mono to win just because he's been doing so well this season, and I don't really see it being let up this week.
Yeah, I'm also going to have to go with Mono here. This one I was a little torn on just because I kind of like Chimpact's matchup. I know that Mono is just fantastic with preparation and that he'll find ways to punish Chimpact for bringing certain threats like the Doug Trio, or if he just decides to bring somewhat standard sets that just seem really easy to bring on paper. But that is the thing about Chimpact. He's really not predictable. Even when something does seem obviously good, like there's no reason that he shouldn't bring something, he'll just do something else anyway because he's unique and his thought process and preparation is unique. So it's just definitely a tough one to call. But like Berk said, Mono has just been so dominant this season, and it's just really hard to pick against him because even though Chimpact is a phenomenal player and has what looks to be a pretty nice matchup, Mono usually figures out ways to kind of play around a difficult matchup, and he definitely has some very big threats to Chimpact's team. Jirachi looking really, really threatening as well. So should be an interesting match. Definitely looking forward to see this one. This is probably the match I'm most excited to see this week. So I'm going to go with Mono, but I just want a good game overall.
Same. I'm really looking forward to this one. And another match that I think is going to be really, really good is the Florida Gators versus the San Francisco Arcaniners. So why don't you take this one?
Okay, so looking at this one is also really tough to call because it's another one where I just felt like the matchup is kind of in Gators' favor, but I just picked George anyway because George definitely has threats to Gators' team. He could do a lot. He's just got a very solid team in general. A lot of his Pokemon are very threatening. I mean, he's got things like Raikou, which look really nice here. Mew, which is great against every team. Garchomp definitely puts in a good amount of work offensively. The list goes on. He's definitely got some really big threats. Volcarona is also pretty nice, but at the same time, Gator really has some massive threats to George's team with things like Latios, Mamoswine, even Hawlucha actually looks really scary if Mew isn't played correctly, or if Mew is weakened or removed or something like that. So I think this one could be a really interesting match. I have to give it to George just because he's got so much experience over Gator, but Gator really has been impressing me this season. I've definitely been keen on his prep, and his playing is very solid to back it up. So I am interested to see on how this one goes. But for now, I'm just going to stick with George.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with George. This was, like you said, kind of a toss-up just because you look at the team matchups, and Gator, I would say, probably has it. And I hate to say this is a threat because it almost exclusively does nothing every single match, and that's Mamoswine. But you look at things like Mamoswine, and then you add in Hawlucha, and you add in Heatran and Latios. A lot of it's going to hinge on how Suicune is played, because Suicune is kind of like the linchpin of George's team right now, especially in this matchup. So if Gator can get rid of Suicune, then it opens up a big door for Latios, for Mamoswine, for Heatran to actually play a really offensive role against George's team. But George, being the battler that he is and the planner that he is, I feel he can find a workaround to make sure that those things can't sweep him. So I am going to go with George, but I feel like this could be either. Yep. Up next, we have the Detroit Steel Wings versus the Alola Athletic. Now, I'm going with the Detroit Steel Wings, as most of us are going with the Detroit Steel Wings over the Alola Athletic. And one of the reasons I have Crimson picked is Callum has, as I've said in the past, a fairly fighting weak team. And if you couple that with Steel Stab, not a lot on Callum's team wants to deal with Cobalion. Excadrill and Tyranitar are offensively checked. Rotom-Wash doesn't take close combats, neither does Shaman. Emboar, Druddigon, Aromatisse, you just go down the line, and things don't really want to deal with it. Yeah, I get Crobat is there, but, Cobalion does get Volt Switch and Stone Edge. So I feel like if Crimson plays Cobalion the way he's been playing it in the past, he should be able to rack up quite a few kills with it. And possibly, he should be able to... if he can use Cobalion well, he should be able to punch a hole through Callum's team, maybe to open up things like Tornadostarian, possibly help open up Kyurem to really punch holes as well, get rid of the Aromatisse or get rid of Tyranitar, so that Kyurem can really play a big role in the match. So I am going to give it to Crimson Detroit Steel Wings. He's also been playing very, very well. That's not to say Callum has been playing poorly, but Crimson, he's pretty much held his own every single week, and I don't really see this week being much different.
Yeah, I could definitely see that as well. I think Crimson has been doing quite well this season, and part of me wanted to pick him, and then I just looked at the matchup, and I really do like Callum's matchup here because the Sand offense just looks so good, because the only thing that Crimson really has to take those hits from like a Sandrush Excadrill is something like a Slowbro. Serena could sort of do it, but obviously it's not eating up Life Orb Iron Heads, Scizors, what have you. And he's actually got pretty nice checks to something like Tornadus T, which is a massive threat in the format. But he's got things like Rotom Wash. He has like Sandrush Excadrill, under the sand. He's got Tyranitar, which, with like a Chople Berry or something like that is a pretty good Torn T check. So yeah, he's definitely got checks to some of Crimson's most scary threats. And he just has a pretty nice offensive matchup as well, in my opinion, because he's got things like Emboar, which even though he's got a Slowbro, Emboar is something that is strong enough to get past Slowbro, which could be really useful for Excadrill. He's got things like Crobat, which outspeed the Tornadus, so even if the Tornadus is a really big offensive threat, he could at least potentially force it out. So overall, I did like Callum's matchup here, which is why I decided to go with him, because obviously he is getting, new. Well, he's newer to the format, so he's still trying to get used to things, but he has been doing pretty solid so far, especially for a first-year guy, and his matchup, in my opinion, looks pretty good. So that's why I'm going to go with Callum in this situation.
Callum in this situation?
Callum in this situation. I probably should have said this game.
I was so confused. I'm like, isn't that Jersey Shore guy?
Yeah, we're bringing back the Jersey Shore. Callum the situation.
All right, so wow. So up next, we have the San Jose Sharpedos versus the New Orleans Pelipers. So why don't you take this match?
Okay, now this one was difficult to call because, it was hard for me to say which one has, a better matchup. It seems like both guys have big threats to one another. The only real Tapu Bulu check that Tom has is Celesteela, which obviously is a very good one to the grass moves, but the thing is, Bulu gets things like not Natural Gift, Nature's Madness, which is really, really nice for something like Celesteela, which does not have reliable recovery, so it could, kind of just go right for a Nature's Madness on the switch in and take off a nice and easy 50% from the Celesteela, which that really does have an effect long term. And then Infernape just looks so scary against Tom's team because his best offensive check is Azelf, because even something like Zygarde Dog does not take Iron Fist Mach Punches very well at all. So I think Azelf is definitely a must bring because it seems like it does do a good amount of work to John's team offensively, and it also is kind of nice to offensively check, or sort of defensively check the Infernape as well, because something like a Swords Dance or Nasty Plot, Infernape with Mach Punch or Vacuum Wave could just be so threatening if he doesn't have Azelf. So that's another thing. But then obviously Tom has massive threats to John's team as well. Celesteela definitely being one of them, Azelf being another. Thunderous T is a threat to any team, no matter what. Thunderous T has some type of moveset that could really put a lot of pressure on pretty much any team. So it's definitely tough to pick, but John is, I believe he's coming off a pretty solid win over Steve, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and I just decided to go with John in this situation because overall he's always impressed me as a solid player, solid with preparation. So tough one to call, but I'm going to go John.
Yeah, so of course, just like every single week before then, I am picking Tom and the San Jose Sharpedos. It is a very difficult matchup for both. I think Infernape is just the consummate threat to Tom's team because Tom has a fairly sizable fire weakness, just based on the team makeup. Only thing really that can take it being Vaporeon, but Vaporeon doesn't really like taking close combats. But then on the other side, you'll get Tom and he sees Thundurus Therian, and you'll get John and you're like, what really wants to deal with Thundurus Therian? It's going to be an AV Jolteon or an AV Gudra, and I feel like it'll box John into kind of like a certain type of planning, and I feel like Tom can take advantage of that. So it's hard to say who has the better matchup. Like you said, Tapu Bulu, very big threat, but Tom does have pretty much one of the best Tapu Bulu counters in Cell Steel. There's really not much you can do to it to kill it. Obviously, Nature's Madness can bring it down to 50%, but you think Leech Seed, it can get its health back, so it's going to be interesting to see what both bring. And I feel like if Tom brings the right sets, he can win this match. But then again, John, very good planner, very good battler. He can also win, but I am going to go with Tom and San Jose Sharpedos. So up next, we have the San Francisco Giants versus the Milwaukee Sawbucks. Everyone has the San Francisco Giants picked except for Spastic going with the Milwaukee Sawbucks. And I think the reason I'm going with Gio and the reason why everyone else is going with Gio is because while Gio hasn't been playing that well this season, I think his team is not what he thought it was going to be. It's not as good as he thought it was going to be. But at the same time, Steve is not playing that well. His team, I think, is worse than Gio's. So Gio kind of has the matchup, despite Steve having one of the most powerful electric types out there in Xurkitree. I feel like if Gio can plan around the Xurkitree well enough, he won't really have too much of a problem with the rest of the team, because you look at things like Mimikyu and Gio has an Arcanine. You look at Kartana, Gio has an Arcanine, and you just go down the list and you see that Gio really has good answers for most of Steve's offense, and Steve doesn't have great things to deal with things like Salamence, especially after like the disguise is broken, and Gengar is just kind of looking like a huge threat if Meloetta is gone. So I am going to give it to Gym Leader G and the San Francisco Giants based on, I think he's playing a little bit better than Steve, and I think his team matchup's a little bit better as well.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with a similar sentiment there, just because the matchup does seem not even. I would definitely say it's a little bit in Gio's favor, but just with how Steve, I guess, has been playing this season, I don't have too much confidence with him. He definitely got that huge win week 1, but obviously there was a couple ifs attached to that game because there was a good amount of hacks, and yeah, I'm just going to have to stick with Gio here because even though, like you said, he hasn't been playing his absolute best this season, it's definitely seemed like it's been more solid than what Steve's been doing so far. So because of that, I'm going to stick with Gio for this because I do think his matchup is also slightly better.
So the last match we have is the Utah Jasmine versus the San Diego Chim Chargers. So you can take the final match.
Okay, now this one is really interesting because the Manaphy on the Jasmine really is a thorn in the side to MV's team, because obviously Manaphy's a great Pokemon in the format, but one thing about it that's kind of interesting is it's got a really nice speed tier for most of MV's Pokemon other than Virizion and Alakazam. It outspeeds everything, and it also really could take advantage of the rain theme of MV's team, not just because it's a water type, but obviously it gets the hydration ability, which allows it to run things like Calm Mind sets really effectively. So because of that, it definitely deters the way MV may want to prepare for this game, because even if the Jasmine don't want to bring Manaphy, then MV, or not, they don't want to bring Manaphy, maybe they don't want to bring like a Calm Mind, like Rest Sweeper that takes advantage of the rain. MV still has to be careful bringing rain because he has to worry about that set. So because of that, and Manaphy just being a general huge threat, it could definitely deter the way MV prepares around it. And yeah, overall, this one definitely seems like it's going to be a very interesting matchup. Overall, I just know MV to be a really solid player and a incredibly creative builder. So because of that, I'm going to go with MV, but this should definitely be an exciting match to watch, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with MV and the San Diego Chim Chargers. Necro did pick up a win last week in his premier
debut.
In his Yeah, I was about to say preview. I'm like, is that it? And Necro did pick up a win in his preview battle of GBA Season 7 against Gym Leader Geo, but now he's playing against Envy. Envy is one of the top coaches so far this season, just like he was last season. And while the team matchup it's weird because obviously Zapdos is a huge threat for Envy. Just by facet of being a more rain-based team, Zapdos can take advantage of that. It's a very powerful electric type, and Envy doesn't have too many things that really want to deal with it. Manaphy as well, like you said, it can run a rain, hydration, rest, sleep talk set. Rain, wow. It can run a rain, hydration, rest set and be able to set up Calm Minds, and if it does successfully, Envy doesn't have too much that wants to deal with that either. So Necro's really going to have to use Manaphy and Zapdos well, and if he feels like the rain is a little bit too much of a problem, there is a Hippowdon which can set up the sand and just kind of disrupt rain sweeping, but who brings Hippowdon against a rain team? That doesn't make much sense. So I feel like Envy has a good team matchup, but Necro has his own threats, and the fact that Envy's just been such a strong player this season, I am going to give it to Envy and the San Diego Chim Chargers.
Yep.
And that is going to wrap up the Week 6 Pick'em crew for GBA Season 7. As always, leave your picks down in the comment section below and your locks. Let us know why you're picking what you're picking, why you're locking for who you're locking for. And I feel like this week it's last week I felt was a little bit easier to pick. This week there's a lot of matches where I'm kind of unsure on who's going to win. So it's definitely going to be a good week. Do you have anything else to say?
Yeah, I'm excited to watch this week just because we have a lot of big games with some big name coaches and also interesting matchups. So this one definitely seems like it's going to be a tough one to pick. So it would be nice to just come out of here positive, with 5 wins or more. So we'll see what happens next week, and I hope you guys continue to make your picks, in the Twitter polls and in the comments of these videos, just to go along and show us that you guys are engaged, because that makes it more fun for everybody. So yep, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and you could finish the outro, Berk.
Oh dang, I don't like doing outros. But that's all I got for today. We will see you all next week.